Hi, I'm Jimmy Dillon and welcome to Rockin' the Blues. We're going to be exploring, among other things, slide guitar. This is a slide here, and I'd like to introduce Stacy, my National Resophonic guitar, and she's a rock machine and a blues machine, both. As we're going to discover in our little journey here, the blues and rock and roll have a lot in common. They kind of lace together. I'm going to be working in the key of G, an open G tuning. And so before we get started on Rockin' the Blues, I want to make sure we're in tune with each other, okay? So here's the way G tuning goes. Your open E string is tuned to a low D. So that's actually a full step down. Okay, so from E to low D, one full step down. Your A string is tuned to a G, which again is one step down from the A. There's that. Okay. Your D string is right as it normally is in a natural D. Okay. Your G string, again natural. And your B is natural as well. Now your high E string is down to D, so you're down one full step. So this is open G tuning, and it sounds something like this. Okay? That's obviously a G chord. Now this is a great place to start for learning slide guitar, and that's the first technique I'm going to approach with you. If you watched my opening DVD, which is called The Soul of Acoustic Guitar, we got into finger picking, and I'm going to reiterate what I taught in the beginning of that particular program. But before I do, I want to talk about the 4 T's, okay, which is touch, tone, timing, and taste. Now when we're approaching slide guitar, this is especially important because it's a little bit counterintuitive, because when you play slide guitar, you're actually fretting over the fret as opposed to what we normally do, which is in the middle of the fret. But before we get to that, I want to show you the finger picking pattern that we're going to be using, which is the same one I taught you in my very first DVD program, Soul of Acoustic Guitar. And it's a basic pattern that goes like, okay, I'm going to slow that down for you one time. So you start with your thumb on the second string, which is your root note on a G, open G, and it goes down with the thumb, okay? Down again on the next string, which is your D string. Then your second finger, you come up, you pluck up on your B string, and then your first finger on your G string, and once again down on the D string with your thumb. I'm going to take that one more time slowly because this is important. We're going to be using this quite a bit. So it's down, down, B string, up, G string up, first finger, and bend back down on the D string, which is your thumb. Now when you hear that up to speed, you'll recognize this picking pattern. It's very common in folk music and the blues and even in rock and roll. Okay, it's that rolling pattern. So we're going to be utilizing that particular pattern of picking, of finger picking, in this first exercise. Okay, so for many of you, even advanced guitar players, slide guitar is kind of a really mysterious kind of thing. A lot of people have a hard time grasping it, and I'm going to explain why shortly. But before I do, I'm going to talk a little about the roots of slide guitar. And back in the early blues days, before there was electric guitar, they built these resophonic guitars in the 20s. Okay, National was one of the first companies to build them. And the reason they did it was because you couldn't hear the guitar above the orchestra with the big jazz bands and the swing bands. And so they built these with a resonator in here. It's actually a spun aluminum pie-shaped thing. And it's got a biscuit in the middle. And that's responsible for that really cool, that's kind of a country sound, but that plinky sound that we have associated with the blues. And so what happened is, originally they did these, the jazz bands would play that stuff, and you could be heard almost like a banjo sound. It could be heard above the orchestra before the electric guitars. Well, what happened is the old blues guys got a hold of these guitars, and with the path of least resistance was their philosophy. They open-tuned it to a chord like this. And this case an open G chord, commonly called Sebastopol tuning, many other names for it, by the way. Okay, so you had an open G chord, and they drink a bottle of whatever was around, rot gut or whatever, and they break the bottle off, sand it down, and they put it on their finger, and thus the name bottleneck guitar or slide guitar. It was also done with a knife, many different things. But again, it's one of those organic things that just sort of developed out of necessity, really, to make a sound. So the result was a sound something like this. Really haunting sound of slide guitar. And it's become the voice of a lot of different kinds of music over time. Eventually led to pedal steel and country, but the early stuff was really blues oriented, and it was done in the style that I'm about to show you, which is kind of a claw hammer, finger picking, early blues style. So what I want to talk about next is the technique of playing slide guitar. What really gets troublesome for people a lot of times is they try to play it without muting, and so they're playing a passage, and then all that extraneous noise there, right? That doesn't work with slide guitar, okay? You have to be really mindful of two things. One is, when you play in slide guitar, rather than playing, as I mentioned earlier, in the middle of a fret like we do with normal guitar, we normally play in the middle of a fret, right? That's correct fretting. However, in slide guitar, it's not. Because what happens is you have to play directly over the fret to be in tune in slide guitar. So if I'm trying to go from a G, now normally to go to a C, you go up to the 5th fret. That's a C chord in G tuning. Again, we explored this on my last DVD. However, in slide guitar, when you want to go from a G to a C, you go all the way up to the 6th, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th fret. So you're still at the 5th fret, but you go over the fret. So if I go down here, it doesn't work, it's flat. So you got to go all the way to the fret, and then you're in tune to the 4 chord. Same thing with 5 chord. In this case, the 7th fret, okay? Now you'll notice when I'm doing this, if you watch me play in the beginning, and you'll see more of it, there's a lot of what we call muting going on, and this is really important. So when you're playing a slide guitar, usually I use in this case I've got the slide on my pinky. There's many different ways to do it. Bonnie Raitt uses this finger, I think, and a lot of people use this one. It just depends on your preference. There's no real hard, fast rules there. However, I want to emphasize this. When you're playing slide guitar, I use my index finger, my first finger, and I lightly kind of float behind this. Because when you're playing slide guitar, unlike regular guitar, you're not fretting. You're floating on the string. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's it. So one of the cool things about slide is it's almost like a human voice if you listen to the vibrato. Very soulful. But you'll notice I'm lightly covering the string with my index finger as I follow the slide up, okay? That's the first part of muting. So if I'm doing a picking pattern like I showed you, right? So we're rolling along in a picking pattern. Now I want to go to the C chord. See how my right finger's... Because if I don't do that, it's going to sound like... all that extraneous noise you don't want. So the first rule is muting with the index finger on the left hand. Very important to get the touch. And when you're playing slide, in any kind of guitar, relax your hand like this. Just let your hand just be like that, like natural, okay? And when you approach the guitar, you don't want to bend it and force it in any way. Especially with slide guitar, you got to be loose and fluid or it won't work. It'll be very stiff. It won't work. It'll be kind of brittle sounding. So again, coming up to the 4 on a finger pattern like this. Now you'll notice how I'm moving it a little bit. It's a subtle vibrato that I use to keep it kind of in tune. You got to use your ears on this part too. Listen to it. Back to the 1. Now I'm going to go to the 5 chord, which in this case will be a D chord on the 7th fret. Sliding up. Then to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord. So what that basically is a finger picking pattern in the key of G, utilizing the 1, 4, and 5 chord, which we use in blues a lot. I'm going to get to some other chords too in the process. So the other thing I want to recommend is when you're playing slide, you also mute with your right hand, and this is a little bit more tricky. You'll notice if I play a passage on slide, I really utilize muting with this hand, and the reason is obvious because if you've got all these strings, ringing out, and I want to play a line like a Dwayne Allman. Now that's a pretty advanced lick right there. But you'll notice, let's see how I'm muffling. I'm grabbing onto the other strings and picking with this finger. So it's a little bit complex, but I just want to mention it right now because I'm going to go into depth later on in this process. But it's important to mute with both hands, and when we get into electric slide, which we will do later, it really gets important because it will get away from you if you don't get into the muting. So with no further ado, let me play a passage from a song called Private Investigator that's from my first album, Bad and Blue. And this one has a little 1-4-5 kind of feel to it. In fact, it has a sharp 5 in it, so you'll understand what I'm talking about when I get to that. A sharp 5 in this case would be a D sharp or an E flat, okay? And it'll be self-explanatory as we go. So once again, we're starting with that same finger pattern, okay? Now we're gonna go to the C. Picking up that high E. 7th. So I'm picking up that high string. Be perfect. It's the blues. You notice how I hit that open D string? Back to the C. Okay, so this actual song has a sharp 5 in it, and I want to show you that because it makes it a little bit unusual. The thing about blues is it gets to be a little pedantic if we do it the same way every time, 1-4-5, 1-4-5. So I like to throw in different changes in there to make it more interesting. And in this case, it goes like this. Here's your C. Here's your 4 chord. Harmonic there. 5 chord. Noticing I'm throwing a few passing licks in there. One of the things I noticed about G tuning and slide especially, what's really fun about it is you got all open strings, okay? You'll be able to, and this is our goal, is to incorporate as many open strings as possible in the blues because it makes it much more interesting. That's kind of a little bit of a country twang to it. When I teach a music camp for kids called Blue Star Music Camp in the summer. And sometimes I'll get students in that are barely able to play guitar. They've just started. Guitar is a physical instrument, and especially when you're young, it's tough. So what I always tell the early Blue Star campers is, if you can play an open G, I'll get them in an open G, okay? And if you can take your first finger right here, and take it and go to your 4 chord, which is the C, and your 3 chord, here. You can do those 3 things. And you can do this pattern. If you can mix those 3 together, you can do something like ha ha ha. And you're a blues man right there. That's the way to start. So it's really helpful to get familiar with this G tuning. And getting back to slide though, this is a good format for this because with the sharp 5 it makes it a little more interesting. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this right now. Same finger picking pattern, however, I'm going to throw in a couple of what I call cookies. We're going to go into Jimmy's cookie jar right now. And I'm going to show you some cool little licks, and then we'll go back and we'll dissect it slowly so you can understand what I'm doing. So I'll take it slow at first so you can understand what this vocabulary of licks is about. And we'll start out like this. Same finger picking pattern, right? And every once in a while we'll throw the E string. 7th. Here's your 4. A little melody here. Now we're going to go to the sharp 5. That's your G7. And that leads you into your 4 chord. You feel like it wants to go to the 4. Anytime you hear 7th like that on your root chord, it takes you into your 4 chord. So the whole idea here is to link it all together, throw in a couple of licks. Little melody. Little personality. See how important the muting is. So you get the articulation. See how I'm muting everything? Both hands are muting. So if I don't, it all rings out. Okay, so that's Private Investigator. So that's an example of just finger picking, very basic, slowly. Now I'm going to play it a little bit faster for you, and I'm going to get a little bit fancier with it, just for a little inspiration. So don't be scared. I'm going to get into some little drop licks and little, fancy things. But I want to give you an example of how the blues can be not boring, not pedantic, but actually very exciting and lyrical. And later on I'm going to do a performance with lyrics on this song. But check this out, Up to Speed.
My friend Jimmy has the coolest guitar lessons. Go to jimmydillon.com/free and get all your amazing gifts. He's the best. Roll, rock and roll. Stay awesome and rock and roll.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. And you know what, it would mean a lot to me if you'd hit the subscribe button above and then hit the bell notification for new videos when they come out.